Welcome to the Nano podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of nano-cap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of nano-cap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week, we have Joe Davy, the CEO of Banzai International, stock ticker BNZI. Banzai International is a marketing technology company that provides data-driven marketing and sales solutions to companies that want to grow faster. Thanks for coming on the show, Joe.
Hey, my pleasure.
So, Joe, tell me a bit more about yourself. I was going through your LinkedIn, and you have some sort of kind of different experience from being a founder to working at some high-growth startups. Tell me a little bit about your path and how it led you to where you're at today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Will. Well, I started off my career as a software engineer. I grew up in kind of small town North Carolina, went to school at Carolina, dropped out, started a company out of school, worked in private equity briefly, and ultimately, prior to starting Banzai, I helped build a company called Avalara, which ended up growing quite a bit and going public and being acquired by Vista Equity Partners. Today, I think it's one of the 25 largest software companies in the world. That was a great experience, and I got to be, kind of a key part of the team there. And ultimately, I think we realized some of the challenges that Avalara was having on the marketing side were really directly related to the technologies that were available in this kind of like mushroom cloud of solutions that have developed out there. And we just realized like this can't go on forever. And so somebody's got to come in and help consolidate some of these tools, make sure that they work together smoothly, whatever. I mean, the biggest problems we've just seen consistently is just marketing tools don't often work together very smoothly, and it makes marketers' lives really, really hard. Data doesn't sync correctly. You can't get accurate. This field doesn't map to that field. It only works 80% of the time or whatever. And so we just thought, look, I mean, this is a classic problem that can be solved by, putting all these things on a single platform, integrating these products so that they all work together smoothly, and making it easy for marketers to solve their problems. And that only works if we have the best products. So that's what we're focused on.
So with your background at Avalara and like LegalPad, was there a specific marketing problem that you were like, this is what I want Banzai to go after first? Or was it the kind of that the marketing is so fragmented and that's what you wanted to go after first, just connecting it all?
That's a really great question. I mean, initially it really was like more of a broad-based demand gen problem, right? So in marketing, you have this challenge, which is I need to build and scale a team of people to go have interactions with my prospects, my potential customers, to grow my pipeline so that my sales team can then go actually, find opportunities and close deals, right? And we just realized how challenging this was. There's this dynamic in the marketing world where you build a team to go do that, but now that team gets metric, they get their KPIs, they get, their budget of stuff that they need to hit. And so they're just laser focused on that. And so they're not very nimble, right? Because in order to make that team effective, they have to be very, very process driven and very, very focused on that. And you can't deviate from that. But then at the same time, marketing is basically all about being responsive to the customer. And so you have this weird disconnect. And this is why you see companies have two yo-yo teams. It's kind of what we call it. Like they'll go hire 30 people, go build up a big BDR team. Then 6 months later, okay, maybe we're not quite getting the results we want. Then 6 months later, boom, we're going to fire the problem is the people. It's the bottom 20, performers. Let's trim it back down to 10 people. Okay. Oh, okay. Now this is working again. Oh, we're getting good economics. Okay. Let's scale this back up. Let's hire 30 new people. And so you just have this kind of back and forth. What we realized was we could take a lot of the skill sets, like 90% of the skill sets behind that, and we could solve it through automation. And then we could offer that as a service. And so that was our first product, which was really like Reach 1.0. We didn't call it that at the time, but that's essentially what it was. And it basically let marketers go into, rather than like having to hire and manage a team of people and all that, if they had a campaign that they wanted to drive like short-term activity on, like, for example, I want to get people to my event. That was the primary use case for that product. Or like, I want to get people to my webinar. I want people to download my white paper. I want people to, I'm going to be at this conference and I want people to know that I'm going to be there and book a meeting with me while I'm there, right? That kind of stuff. That's stuff that your core team is just really not good at doing because they're not nimble enough to pivot for a week into doing this completely other thing and then pivot back and still hit their numbers for the month or whatever. And so what we realized was like there was this kind of, iceberg of demand beneath the surface that was never getting fulfilled because the core team couldn't do it. And they're really just were dealing with agencies and stuff was the only other option. And agencies also are not very nimble, right? And so what we said was, we'll build a service that gives you a pane of glass to manage that. And you can go put in your campaign details, hit go, and then we'll just figure it all out. Like we'll deal with the scaling and we'll deal with the people and the emails and the list building and all that stuff. And that product, once we hit on those couple of kind of solutions, that product really just took off like a rocket. And majority of the revenue for that product was really around events and driving, what we say butts in seats for events right up until March 2020 when, basically companies entirely stopped doing events. And so we had to figure out what we're going to do. And we realized a lot of our customers were going to webinars. So we ended up buying a webinar company, Demio, that grew a lot from 2020 on. And, now we have several thousand customers on that product and many really big companies on that product. Now we started looking at, okay, what are the other things related to that we could add on? So we just announced acquisition of a company called OpenReel, which is a video editing platform. So that's, a very natural alignment. We've relaunched our Reach product, which is really cool. We've rebuilt to version 2. And we built the first version. We didn't have any of the AI stuff that we have today. So we did that. So anyways, that was a bit of a word salad. I apologize for the 10-minute diatribe, but that's like our overall, that was like how we got started. And that's kind of like what led us to where we're at today.
So let me regurgitate that back to you and tell me where I'm right and where I'm wrong. Okay. So you all have like an all-in-one marketing solution to help collect emails, create an email list, market out your webinar, edit the video software, and then remarket to the people who are on the webinar. Here's the different video clips. Here's why you should stay engaged with us. And is that kind of the general concept?
Yeah, I mean, and the only thing I would say that's like slightly differs from that is rather than saying like, I don't think we have an all-in-one product, but we want to have products that solve, a variety of different problems for our customers, right? So if you need to run a webinar, you can come buy our Demio product. You can buy it on our website. It just does webinars, and it's the best product in the world for marketers for doing webinars, like period. And then if you want to turn that content into production video clips that look beautiful and are branded and, all that stuff and, put them on your YouTube or wherever, then you can use OpenReel to do that. And it's really, really great at that. And then if you want to, get more people to attend your webinar or attend your event or whatever, then you can use Reach for that. So that's our the way we think about it is like marketers don't buy platforms that do everything for them, right? Marketers want to buy solutions to specific problems, right? I need to record, like we're talking on Riverside FM right now. Like that's a great company. Like, people, don't want to buy something that's going to do everything, including podcasts. They just want to buy, like, I need to do a podcast. To buy the absolute best thing for that. Riverside is probably it, or one of the 2 or 3 best options out there, right? And so you're just going to solve that problem. But then you're immediately presented with a new problem, which is like, okay, after this recording is over, then like, now I got to figure out how do I get my branding on it and how do I make it look really nice and how do I get it polished? And so like, then you need something to do that. And you want those products to work together really seamlessly. And so that's basically what we're doing is like giving people an easy way to solve the problem they're trying to solve today. And then when they find the next problem that they now need to solve, giving them an option that makes it seamless for them and delivers on what they need.
As kind of a side note, do the different solutions have kind of like a proprietary like API that connects them together that makes it that much more seamless?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, what we've done in a lot of cases is we've actually integrated stuff behind the scenes, kind of like Apple, right? So if we don't own the product, we can't really control that full experience. But if we own both products, then we can completely control the experience. So we can make sure that the data just magically shows up. We did this with our Boost add-on for Demio, which is a social sharing add-on for Demio. When you click on Boost, you just have all your events populated in there. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to set up an integration. You don't have to OAuth anything. it knows if you have an account on Boost, you have an account on Demio, it knows that you're the same person. It's going to just populate it with that data. You're done. I mean, it's that easy.
So let's take a step back. How did you start Banzai? Like, when did you finally go, this idea is bothering me enough that like I must come up with a solution for it? And how long was it you just like kind of tinkering on it? And then how much of it was like, hey, we're out in the open, we're actually trying to get customers?
That's a great question. I mean, I left Avalara in like early 2016, I think. And so started this company around the same time. And I looked at a couple other ideas, like one of the founders of Avalara and I, we played around with a couple ideas of companies we might start. And we actually got pretty far down the line with one of them. And then he had a personal situation. I won't go into it, but he had a personal situation come up and he kind of said, hey, I still want to do this with you, but like, I can't really fully commit to it right now because of this other thing going on. And so we just ended up deciding not to do that. I mean, it was, still very close, obviously, but decided not to do that. But then what ended up happening was we just said, okay, look, let's I kind of had this idea cooking in the back of my head from my time at Avalara and just knowing the demand gen challenges that we had because I was running a lot of demand gen teams there, and just kind of dealing with the day-to-day struggle of it. And so I said, okay, like let's see if this has legs. And so we went out and actually my co-founder is based in North Carolina. We didn't have a lot of money, but I had some money from Avalara. So that was our seed money. And to start the company, because we didn't have a lot of money, he actually moved to the Philippines. He was half Filipino. He moved to the Philippines and he built our first team there. And that's why the name of the company is Banzai International, because it was just kind of a joke to the fact that there were only two of us, but I was in Seattle and he was in the Philippines, and so it was international. So we basically got started the first year. Like I wrote all the code and he did all the operational stuff, and we just made it work. And I would say like the first year was just all about iterating on trying to find product market fit, like find a use case that we can just sell repeatedly, that we can just stamp out, right? Like same customer profile, same problem, same solution, because that's what you have to do to get to a scalable business. And so we probably spent about a year working on that. We came up with a list of 5 ideas of like different demand gen type of problems that we could go solve. And we just went out and started testing them. Like we started talking to people, started meeting with people, started just calling people, asking for intros, whatever. And ultimately what we found, like we just started crossing things off the list. We were like, okay, like we're getting a lot of people saying they're interested in this, but nobody's buying it. Or like a lot of people just telling us they're not interested at all. That's easy. Just cross it right off. So if you have like 10 conversations and nobody wants to buy it, you're like, okay, well, this is probably not going to be that easy, right? I want to find something where I can have like 3 conversations and somebody's going to buy, right? Because that's like the level of demand that you have to have in the early days to make something work, right? You really have to be like 10 times easier, 10 times faster for them in order for them to want to take the time to buy from you. Because especially like in the marketing world, there's so many solutions, there's so much competition, people are constantly inundated. So you really have to have a strong differentiator to make it work. So anyways, we spent about a year doing that. We crossed all 5 ideas off our list because nobody wanted any of them. And then we got a call from somebody that was like a referral to us. And they said, hey, I'm hosting this event in a month and I want to get 50 people there. And could you guys do that? Like my existing sales team's too busy to help me. And we said, okay, yeah, we could do that. And my wife actually had run corporate events at Avalara. And so I actually called her and we said like, hey, can you help us with this? Because like, we don't really know how to do it exactly. Like you're the expert in it. And so she helped us like build our first little playbook, like figure out what we were doing. And we took it to the customer and the customer was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. You guys obviously know what you're doing. We were like, yeah, okay, maybe. I mean, not really, but we'll try it. And we tried it and it was super successful. And that same person actually has been our customer now at like 4 companies and still a customer of ours. And that company actually was a small little startup that ended up having a much bigger tech company that we got to their event through our platform, that our platform drove the attendee for their event. Maybe after about 2 years of working with us, drove an attendee from a big tech company to their event. The attendee came, said, oh, wow, this is really an interesting thing that you guys are doing, and bought the whole company. And so it was actually really cool because we were able to kind of help them grow that business a lot and then ultimately help them realize an exit in that business. And we were like, wow, this thing really has legs. But to answer your question, we really launched in early 2017, like first half of 2017 with that product. And then we scaled it up pretty fast. I mean, coming into 2020, and it's actually like a crazy coincidence, but basically like 3 years to the date after launching, just about, we closed our Series A because we bootstrapped the company to begin with. It was just my money going in, and one of our a couple of our friends who had been investors in Avalara put money in, but it was really only a couple of folks. And so then, when we did raise that Series A, then we were like, okay, we're going to go scale this up. Got a big office in Seattle. We hired a bunch of sales reps, all this stuff, and we were like on a huge trajectory like that. And then March 2020 hit, and we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? So really had to figure it out and scramble at that time. But that's just like life in a startup,
Well, that's kind of leads to my next question is, so you found kind of the secret sauce in helping market the event. Did you have any inkling that you just wanted to like turn this into like a lifestyle business and like an event marketing agency? Or did you always know that you wanted to kind of go shoot for the gold since you got how to get so big with Avalara that you know the roadmap?
I mean, to be honest, like probably the lowest stress time in the business was like 2018 or 2019 when we were just a profitable business, and we were growing every month. It was simple. We had a lot of customers, every time we opened the mailbox, there's another check in there, and we were at a much smaller scale, right? But we didn't need a lot of money because, if you're making $1 million a year and you only got, 10 people working in the business, that really works. And so, yeah, there was a time where we were like, oh, this is pretty good. Like we could just scale this up to do like $2 or $3 million a year and just each take home, $1 million a year. And that'd be pretty nice. And then it's a pretty low stress job, right? Like you don't have to, you don't have to go do a lot. And Avalara went public in 2018. And so that was good. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think we talked about it and we just decided like, we think this opportunity is really big. And we think that like once we saw the opportunity to go do the second thing and the third thing and the fourth thing, we really realized, got convicted around the fragmentation in marketing technology being just a fundamental problem in the space that needed to be solved. Once we got to that, then it was like no turning back. It was like, okay, yeah, like we're going to go solve that problem. And that's a much, much bigger prize that we're shooting for. And like, that's how you build $1 billion company out of this ultimately.
You mentioned raising a Series A.
Yeah.
From Series A to going public, you kind of did it in like record time compared to the average startup. A lot of startups are hesitant to go public because they have lack of discipline or like control. What made you go on like the fast track, knowing that like being public was what the goal was as fast as possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, actually going public was not the goal. The ultimate goal was actually we were looking to buy a company based in Austin, Texas. The founder was based in Austin, Texas, at least. Like we flew to Austin, sat down with the founder of the company, and we basically like met for 45 minutes, shook hands on a price, said, great, let's go do it. And at that time in 2021, this was like into 2021, the market for raising capital for these types of acquisitions was very, very strong. And so we were like, we'd just done one, like this is no problem. Like we'll just go do another one. This company's definitely worth it. And so we went out like early, like January 6th, I think 2022, we kicked off the process to go raise the money for the close on the acquisition. And like that went really, really well right up until like the middle of February 2022 when Putin invaded Ukraine. And that was kind of like the watershed moment that became like a turning point in the capital markets, where all of a sudden, we had term sheets got pulled from lenders, and then all of a sudden the economics didn't work out for the equity guys. And so just yada, yada, yada. It ended up that it just got really, really hard to finance yourself. And at the time, though, there were these types of businesses called SPACs that you might be familiar with that were like, hey, this is a really, really smart idea. Like these companies have a lot of money sitting in these trusts. They need to deploy it. They're willing to negotiate right now, and you can get a really good deal. And a lot of them were working really well in 2022. And so we were like, great, we'll go do that. Like we'll go find a SPAC that's got a few $100 million. We'll use a portion of that to go buy this business, and then we'll have a couple $100 million left, and we'll go buy other ones, right? And so really this was like, we're going to go do this like three-way merger, where it's like us, a SPAC, plus this other company. We're going to like put them all together, and then we'll have like this really great, much larger, because that business was much larger than our business at the time. So we'll have this much larger business, we'll be more profitable. We'll have, have some dry powder, like a war chest capital to go after stuff. And so we went out to do that. And then that process just ended up being like a very, very long process. It probably took us over a year to actually get through the process of getting the company ready to go public. And we were a business that like always run
Real
pretty
quick, you
well.
you mentioned earlier that when you started off the business, 2018, it was the least stressful year of your life. Was this like the worst year of your life?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't say it was like the worst year of my life, but it was very stressful. It was a very stressful year. It was just like, it was a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to get a company ready to go public. And it's a lot of like talking with accountants, and it's a lot of talking with auditors, and it's a lot of talking with lawyers, and like the legal bills are, astronomical. You're just like basically spending so much cash. We had to go raise a bunch of money to go do this. And then we had to basically be working on this acquisition at the same time. So it was a very complicated deal. But ultimately, the acquisition that we were working on didn't end up happening. And I mean, we're, still friends with the company and everything, but that was just kind of how it worked out. And so we said, okay, well, now what are we going to do? And we were already kind of like married to the SPAC. So it was like, or at least engaged to the SPAC. And it was like, okay, we already got so much money invested in this, and we've already got like so much time invested in this, and we're already like legally on the hook for it, right? There's not really a way to walk away from it. So we just said, okay, well, we're going to do it. So that's what we did. And ultimately, I mean, there's been ups and downs to it, but I think, now we're in a position where we knew coming out of that like there was a chance that this would have to be a rebuilding year for us. And so that's really what we focused on in the first year being public, was like, we just need to, we need to restructure our balance sheet. We need to clean up, we need to get, cut the expenses down, like get it more profitable, all that stuff. Cause like now we don't have this other bigger company coming in alongside us. Right. And so ultimately that's what we spent the first probably 9 to 10 months of this year working on. And then once we got through that stuff, then it really opened us up to go back and start focusing on M&A again. And so now we've been able to actually get a transaction signed off, which is great. And now we're starting to work on number, 2, 3, 4.
So with you being there as, excuse me, with you being there as Avalara scaled to a publicly traded company, to now you figuring out that you're going to now be the CEO of a publicly traded company, what like specific lessons did you learn, or what type of things where you're like, okay, we messed up this with Avalara, I'm not going to do that again? What was kind of the things you wanted to change this time around?
I mean, that's a great question. I would say, like, personally, I made a lot of mistakes in the scaling process at Avalara. I mean, other folks did as well. And it was like really a lesson in that. I mean, I won't say we got everything perfect at Avalara. And in fact, like, when you're building probably the primary lesson that I learned from Avalara was like, when you're building a business, you can't plan for everything to go right. You have to have a plan that accounts for things to go wrong, because things do go wrong, right? I mean, some of them are foreseeable maybe, and we can avoid them, but some of them are just like unknowable, right? You can't really know, whether making that hire is going to work out or not. You can try, and you can, try to do your best, but, sometimes you get it wrong. Like, you're just going to make mistakes along the way. And that's just part of the process. And so, this, like, I talk about this a lot, like, when you watch a professional football game or something, like I'm a Seahawks fan, like I watch that a lot. Okay. The guys that are on the Seahawks, they don't catch every pass, right? The quarterback gets sacked sometimes. You sometimes you try a play and you don't get anywhere. Like, you end up with a lot of drives that end up with a punt on the 4th down. You kick some field goals that you miss. I mean, and these are the best players in the game, right? I mean, these are the players that are gone through like playing in high school and getting filtered down, playing in college and then getting filtered down. And these are like the 1% of players or less that make it through to the pros. They're the absolute best. And they still, don't catch, the majority of passes probably, or at least like they don't catch all of them, but they just make mistakes, right? It's just how it is. The point is, like, no matter what team you're on, you have to build a team, you have to build a process, and you have to build, an organization that's resilient to mistakes. And the number one way that you do that, is in the software business, is basically it's all about the markets that you're in, and the products that you're in. Like, if you have a great product and you have a great market, it gives you some flexibility to make mistakes, right? You can screw up with customers sometimes and they'll forgive you if they really need your product. If they don't really need your product, then, you're in trouble when you screw up with a customer, right? And so you really, really, really ultimately have to focus on getting that product market fit right. If you have customers that are showing up, banging down your door to get your product, like we do with Demio, for example, then you're golden. And so just having a product that's the best product in the category that solves a real pain point for customers is absolutely non-negotiable. And if you get that part wrong, almost no amount of great execution outside of that will save you. And if you get that part right, it gives you a lot of, it buys you a lot of leeway, which you're going to need. That was the main lesson.
So as we kind of wrap up here, what are some cool new ways you all are using AI, different AI initiatives within your software to connect and make more intelligent decisions as you all market?
I mean, that's a fantastic question. We just launched this product called Curate that I think is a great example of that. Like, I think that a lot of marketers using AI as basically a tool to say, like, give me campaign ideas, give me content ideas, whatever. And they're basically like using what I would call like the platform technologies. So this is things like Claude and ChatGPT and things like that. And those platform technologies are really, really great. And they're like something that we didn't have when we started the company even. And in fact, like I remember I got like early like preview access to like GPT-2 or something, back in the like years ago. And I remember looking at it and just being like, I don't really get this. Like, this isn't that great. Like, I don't really know what you would do with this even. And it just, it didn't work very well at the time. I mean, it was like kind of interesting, but you would put in a prompt and then it would just like fill in more text below. And I was like, I don't really understand why this is, it wasn't really magical at the time. And I think getting to GPT 3.5 was the first time that people were able to really see like, oh, wow, this is magical. Okay, this can really do something for me. And I think the first use case obviously is just like generative content, right? So either that's like text, images, like ads, video, whatever. But now what I think is starting to happen is two things. One is taking that AI and applying it to actually combining it with automation and applying it to solve, bigger business problems for marketers. So for example, like in our Curate product, yes, anybody can go to ChatGPT and say like, hey, write me a blog post for my newsletter. But what Curate does is actually like you can go in and you can say, here's the kind of news or content that my customers or my market is interested in. It will pull in relevant news for you. And then it will use AI to write content for you, edit that content for you, publish it to your blog for you. And then, every week or every day or every month, however you configure it, it will go read all the content that it's generated based on what you've told it you want to go in your newsletter. And it will pick out the most interesting, relevant articles for you. And then it will put those in a newsletter and send that newsletter out to your subscribers. So that's a super powerful combination. It's basically like, it's not just write me some content, which is kind of interesting, but it still requires a lot of work. Like what we've said is like, let's look at the entire work stream that somebody's doing to produce a newsletter and let's see how much of this we can automate. And so really we've got it to the point now where you could take 30 minutes to set this thing up and then maybe never log in ever again and still just have a newsletter that just goes out and writes your stuff, publishes it, writes your newsletters, sends your newsletters, and just continues to work in the background. And that's where you start to get these 10x advantages, right? Where it's like, it's not just saving me a little bit of time coming up with content ideas or whatever. It's actually like fully automating this process for me. And it's pulling the cost of doing this down from $100,000 or $200,000 a year of, team of people I might have to build, pulling it down to like $10,000 a year to where this can just be running in the background, and it's going to give me a very high quality outcome with almost no effort. And so that's where we think the future is going. And I would say the other part to that is actually data analysis. Like I saw a really interesting product yesterday, not one of ours, but somebody else in the industry, where they're using LLMs to basically do cluster analysis around things your customers are talking about. So they'll like read Reddit, for example, they'll like find all the customers that are talking about you, and then they'll categorize those conversations into like, here's people complaining about billing issues. Here's people complaining about, wait times. Here's people complaining about this. Here's people that are happy about this new feature that you launched or whatever. And it'll cluster those conversations for you and give you insights into that. And that's something that's been like very, very hard to do historically using like Bayesian analytics or whatever. But for AI, it's very simple because AI understands concepts, right? In a way that, whatever Bayesian logic just doesn't. So I think that's kind of the future of where that's going to go is going to use AI more. It's going to be more seamlessly embedded in the back end of business applications to do some of the thinking for you and surface insights for you that are maybe what I would call like unstructured insights, right? Things that are not things that you were looking for ahead of time, but things that are emergent in the data that are useful to you and that you want to know about. So I think that's probably, we're probably going to see more of those applications over the next 2 to 3 years.
Your software solution also reminds me almost to like an antidote to innovator's dilemma, that what makes the team grow quick in the beginning is that you only have a couple scrappy marketing people and that they are Jack or Jill of all trades and they can move quickly and such. And then as you scale up the team, they have to manage teams that manage teams, and it loses some of the magic. And so while you can kind of keep the magic by just scaling via software opposed to having to scale via heads, and that allows you to kind of stay nimble, stay creative without having to deal with the bureaucracy and such and the different levels of management. It's very cool and very seems like a window into the future for a lot of companies moving forward.
That's right. I mean, I think the model going forward is going to be less marketers being specialists. Like for a long time, it was this T-shaped marketer, right? You want to be like have a 10% across everything and then go 90% really deep into like one or two areas, right? So like I'm content marketing, or I'm, PPC ads, or I'm, social management, or whatever it is, right? And I think what you're going to see is more and more marketers that are focusing 90% up here and letting the AI do the 90% depth thing for them. So like, with OpenReel, like you don't even have to have somebody that specializes in video content on your team to produce really high video content, really high quality video content, right? You can just leverage that product to drop in your raw video assets and say, here's the clips I want to build. I want them to look really nice. Here's the templates I want to use. Here's the, opening animations, whatever, like the transitions, all the stuff. And it's going to get you that really high quality content. And you're going to be able to focus as a marketer more on your high level strategy. Like, what do you want to accomplish? Like, what's your product marketing? What's your messaging? Like, who are your audiences that you're going after? Like, how do you get in front of those audiences? That's going to be the thing that you get to focus on. And then you're going to be able to say, okay, great. Now for this audience, like I want to do video, I want to do webinars, I want to do events. And you're going to be able to say, boom, 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 here's 3 solutions I can plug in that will just make that stuff happen for me. And as the marketer, then I just get to basically manage those panes of glass rather than having to build teams to go do each of those things. And I think that's going to be a really magical transition. And hopefully what we'll see is that unlocks, I mean, at the end of the day, like our mission is to help grow businesses, right? I mean, it's very, very rewarding because like I'm an entrepreneur myself, right? I know how hard it is to grow a business. And if we can help people do that, like there's so many technologies, so many ideas, even so many like great small businesses that, they have a really valuable service or product, but they just can't break through. And hopefully what we see is those people are actually able to get access to really high quality marketing talent, but they only need a couple people now. They don't have to have a 20-person team anymore,
Well, as we wrap up here, I have one quick last question I have for someone in your situation. Traditionally, software companies, awesome margins, whatever, 80, 90% once you're at scale, and then reoccurring revenue on top of that. With adding like an AI layer onto your software and the compute costing like so much more, do you just charge more, or is margins for a lot of companies that have like an AI solution on top of their software, are they just going to make less margin over time, but then their clients are going to be more efficient, so they're going to want more different software that you offer? Or like, how does that all work? Because I've been kind of thinking about it, and I've never had someone in your position who's kind of layering the AI on top of their already existing software solution, and it's going to help customers, but it may hurt you. And how do you balance that?
That's a fantastic question. I think, yes, I mean, there's a cost to it, and it's an additional cost, right? So like, I think that's what you're getting at is like historically what you've had is basically in your COGS, you've had kind of 2 key costs. You've had your, what I just call like broadly, like your server cost. And then you've had your support cost, right? And so when you're looking at a P&L for a company, like that's what's above the line. It's like, what's it cost me and humans to answer questions and troubleshoot this thing and help customers get up and running and all that? And then what does it actually cost for the servers to run this? And I think now you're going to have a third line item, which is, and probably a lot of companies will bake it into that like server cost or whatever. But you're going to have a third line item, which is really like your AI cost, right? But I think what you'll see is you can deliver so much more value by doing that. So like, for example, with Curate, like your average email marketing product, people are maybe paying $50 or $100 a month for this, right? For just a basic email marketing product. For Curate, we're charging $1,000 a month. Now, like, why is that? It's because Curate does it for you and it leverages the AI to do that. So it's not actually like a business application that you then have to go hire people to use. It's, it's a solution to a problem. It's basically, we identified a job to be done and we built a solution that automates that job to be done. And that's much more valuable, right? Than just giving people a tool, right? It's like the adage, like people don't want a screwdriver, they want a hole in the wall. And so if you are actually going in and giving them that hole in the wall, that's what they actually really want. That's a lot more valuable. So I think that there's going to be this balance that's achieved where, companies can see their margins there will be some additional costs that come to their COGS, but you'll be able to see that you're realizing a lot more value. And because for the company's perspective, they don't have to spend $100,000, they can spend $10,000 now. And that's a lot better deal than buying an off-the-shelf email, like a MailChimp or something, which is a great product, by the way, but like buying MailChimp for $50 a month and then also hiring a person for $5,000 a month on top of that, right? You can get the whole thing for $1,000 a month. That's a lot better. Our all-in cost, maybe our all-in cost on a product like that is, $50 a month or something to support the infrastructure of it. But it's still quite profitable. And I think you're going to see that in our margins we'll probably go into the upper 70s in 2025 and maybe even into the low 80s in 2025. So we are actually seeing margin expansion and hopefully that continues.
No, I definitely think in the next 5 years, there's going to be companies like you all who are able to connect the value that the AI brings. And it's only going to be a boon to your business and your margins. And I can see other people who can't figure out the right cost of goods sold combination on the server spend plus some sort of VCs going to keep giving them money and giving them excuses to keep burning that money, and it will end poorly. So, Joe, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If people want to hear more about what you're doing at Banzai, where should I send them?
Go to our website, banzai.io. Check out our LinkedIn. We post a ton of stuff on there. Like every time we have an update, it goes on there. So it's probably the easiest thing to do is just, check out our website, follow us on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And for those still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement, therefore, by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast Express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this